lot of stories from my dad.
So what I believe happened is that the Irish and the French came over, met in New Orleans, and thus my grandfather.
And I started looking into that because I'm trying to find some things out about Eliza Mitchell, who would be my great-great-great-great-grandmother, whatever. And there's no information about her.
A great, it must be great. I think it's 3 greats. Great-great-great-grandfather of mine on my mom's side was a judge on the court of Frederick of Prussia.
But I don't know. For me, I don't see that it's that important because a lot of the information is hard to tell if it's that correct.
On my one side, my aunt's all into history and stuff, so she knows about both sides of the family. She'll like drive us around, give you tours around DC, and she'll mention where people live and stuff like that.
I've kind of always been sort of interested in history anyway. And this is history that involves, me in a way, my ancestors.
My dad moved here from Norway, and I've never met any of his side of the family, and he doesn't talk about it much, so I don't even know my grandparents' name on that side of the family.
I don't have books. We didn't keep birth certificates and things like that, so it pretty much, on my father's side, it stops at my father. My mother's side goes back to great-grandma, and that's as far back as I can trace it.
I think it was my great-great-grandmother who was allergic to mustard seed.
Mustard?
Yeah. And then she married a man from Chicago who was allergic to canola.
Genealogy is like opening Pandora's box. You ask one question and looking for one person, and you find out all kinds of things about other people that get you off track and onto different tracks.
The more I look into it, the more I'm interested in just trying to find the facts about my own family, but at the same time go through kind of a discovery process about what was happening in Butte. Well, I'm from 5 generations of Butte people. All of my grandparents were here by 1888 on all sides. And of course, I've got a lot of interest I've always had interest in Butte. I came back here to live about 4 years ago, and there were 2 particular mysteries in our family. There's more to it than just calling it the War of the Copper Kings or the Gibraltar of Unionism or the Red Light District. It's more about people with faces, when you look at it from your own family's point of view. So I thought it was worth maybe tracking down those 2 mysteries and in the process just learn more about chaos, what forms chaos take when it's when you just got people thrown up against the land in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of what happened here. So we started coming up here talking to Al and these folks last summer.
18, 20 years ago. I organized this group to preserve all Butte's pictures. It was laying on the floors and laying all over hill. We figured about 6 months we'd have them preserved. Hell, we're still working and we're still way behind.
Oh, it was so busy and all day long. They had 3 shifts of miners working, and they changed at noon and midnight. And there was as many people uptown in Butte at midnight as there were at noon in the afternoon. And the miners used to change shifts, and so the streets were always busy. And some of the miners would have a room, and they would sleep at night, and then another one would sleep in the same bed during the day.
There's a part of me that from a very young age said it's something I shouldn't be interested in. Yet there is a part of me that is very curious. Where did my father come from? I know he was Italian, but I don't know, did they come back from Italy You know, first generation, did they come over on the boat? Did they go through Ellis Island? I have no idea. And for many years it didn't bother me, but only recently has there even been a thought of, I'd like to know, you know, because I think that without that knowing, you don't have a sense of self, or you miss a sense of self.
My father's very well versed in his Scottish, but not at all in his mother's side, because his mother died when he was young, and, so he doesn't know that very well, you know. But that's always interested me. Like, I have a great-grandfather named Enrique. I just think that's so cool. Enrique. I never got to meet him or know much about him, but that Spanish part that I'd like to know more.
I would like to just know more about my grandparents in general, really, because I believe that personality traits and habits are passed on through families.
The idea of this film is about someone who's had some kind of traumatic things that have happened recently. A long-term relationship is broken up, a parent has died, and they're feeling disconnected with the world, and they have some clues about their extended family, the family that goes back into history, but not really a lot of knowledge about it. And so our character is this woman who goes to Butte to rediscover her family, to kind of maybe to come to terms with a little bit who she is and what she's made of. In searching for that, she's also going to be discovering the story of Butte, which is really the story of immigration in the United States, of mining, of work, of capital versus labor.
My mom is all German except for one person who is Dutch. And my dad is from Long Island, New York. But his ancestors were Scotland, England, Swedish, and Dutch.
Our largest using group are genealogists, and they come from all over the world. In 1910, over 20% of our population was foreign-born, and they represent every nation of the world.
He came from Flintshire, Wales, and when he landed here, the immigration officer asked him what his middle name, and he says he didn't have a middle name. He says, you have to have a middle name. And my grandfather didn't have one, so he came from Flintshire, Wales, and he says, my middle name is Flintshire, or he called it Flincher. And so that's how he got in with the artificial name.
So inevitably, by the time we get people here, they've done some, you know, we have lots of interesting stories to tell. Lots of interesting things happen to people. And so we get a lot of, we learn a lot of interesting things about people and places and why people came here and what they were searching for in terms of themselves or financially or other goals people had to come here.
You can start to separate the myth from the reality, and you can start to find out that what you thought was maybe somebody's big story was not a story at all, but really happened. And some of the stuff that really happened was better than any kind of story you'd ever think of.
And we'd become this huge mining camp, and then we had been on the downward slide since 1922 or 3.
Butte, Montana produced much of the world's copper from the 1890s until midway through this century. At the height of mining in Butte, during World War I, the city was home to 100,000 residents. Today, it has a population of 30,000. 100 years of mining and smelting left a strong legacy on the city in the mountains. Butte contains both one of the largest historic districts in the United States and one of its largest polluted sites.
We're the first generation who's old enough to understand how important this stuff is, who has parents who are old enough to be around to tell you something about it, and we're the first ones that have the energy. We're not working, you know, we're not either dead or working, so we're exhausted at night. Plus, this is a unique place in that everything has been preserved. It's all here.
Well, like they called it, a wide open town. You could get a drink anytime you wanted in Prohibition. But then they had a big red light district. Chinatown was just across the street, and the alley right behind it was their main street. Most of the miners were bachelors, and they would live in the boarding houses. Well, they would sleep in the boarding houses and eat there, and a lot of the boarding houses were run by Finn ladies. And lots of times, if you wanted a treat on Sundays, your folks would take you up to the boarding houses to eat where the miners ate. And the food was all home-cooked and terrific food. They used to have and that was just, well, the Berkeley pit has absorbed it. It's just a hole now where McQueen Edition. And then they used to have Meterville, and that is also gone, absorbed by the Berkeley pit. And that was the Italian neighborhood.
I wish I knew more, and I have a feeling that when my parents are gone, I'll regret that I don't know more, that I'll lose that part of my history. But I haven't gotten motivated enough to take action on it now.